Well, welcome to another exciting session with me, Edward Asantiakufu, your presenter. In this lesson, we'll be focusing on viruses and cells. In our earlier lesson, we looked at schemes of classification and taxonomy. We also considered the hierarchy of taxonomy, that is kingdom, phylum, class, order, genus, species. Finally, we concluded by looking at the Linnaean system of classification. Today we shall be looking at viruses and cells. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to describe viruses, explain why viruses do not fall into any of the classification schemes. Finally, define cells and state the types of cells. Have you had a common cold or flu before? What do you think causes it? I believe you know that flu is caused by virus. Have you seen a virus before? I don't think you've seen a virus before, so your answer must be no, right? Because viruses are minute or microscopic and cannot be seen with the naked eye, except with the electron microscope. In fact, they are smaller than bacteria. So the question is, what then is virus? It is a minute infectious particle consisting of a core nucleic acid. And by nucleic acid, we mean either DNA or RNA. And it's enclosed in a protein shell called capsid. They differ from all other forms of life in that they are not cells. So we say they are acellular. If something is described as acellular, then it means it does not have a nucleus, a cytoplasm, or a cell membrane. I believe you are getting the picture. If you are considering something we refer to as an organism, which has no nucleus, no cytoplasm, and no cell membrane, then the picture must be very interesting. Another distinction between viruses and other living things is that viruses do not undergo any of the life processes. And by that we mean growth, nutrition, reproduction, excretion, etc. And they do not do this on their own. However, they are able to reproduce only if they invade a living cell to use the cell system to replicate themselves. In the process, they may disrupt or change the host cell's DNA. They use the cell they invade to make more virus particles that then are released. Viruses are of different shapes. For example, we have rod-like forms, we have spiral forms, we have hexagonal forms, and spherical forms. Viruses are known to be the causes of a number of diseases, such as yellow fever, measles, common cold, or what we call flu, AIDS, etc. And these ones are found in people. In plants, they cause cassava mosaic, for example. They also do cause foot and mouth disease in cattle. Now let us look at features that qualifies viruses as either living or non-living things. Viruses are described as living things because they contain DNA or nucleic acids. They also can multiply or reproduce when they are in a living host cell. Viruses, on the other hand, are considered to be non-living things because of the following. They cannot grow. They lack nucleus. They cannot reproduce on their own. They cannot move. They can form crystals, or we say they can be crystallized. They do not excrete. They do not respire. Now, students, I believe you have a police station in your community. At the police station, what is the name of the place where they keep suspects or criminals? Good. Police cell. You had it right. Today, you will be learning about cells in living things, that is, plants and animals, and not the cell at the police station. I believe the word cell is widely used in our everyday lives. For example, we talk about electric or dry cells, the one we use in our torchlights, in our radios at home. We also talk about crystal cells. We talk about prison cell, etc. So the term cell is used in a number of areas in our lives. In the usage of the word cell, one thing comes to mind: a small independent unit functioning on its own. Now let us have a little background on living cells. Cells were discovered in 1665 by an English scientist and inventor by name Robert Hooke. He had designed his own compound light microscope, initially to observe structures too small to be seen with the naked eyes. Among the first structures to be examined was a thin piece of cork, that is the outer surface of the bark of a tree. Hooke described the cork as being made of hundreds of small boxes, giving it the appearance of a honeycomb. He then called these little boxes as cells. It soon became clear that virtually all living things are made up of cells, and that these cells have certain features in common. In 1858, Rudolf Virchow proposed that the cell was the basis of metabolism as well as the structural unit of living organisms. So in summary, what can we refer to as a cell? A cell is the basic structural and functional unit of a living organism in which chemical reactions take place. These reactions involve energy released needed to support life and to build structures. That is to say, each cell is capable of carrying out all the life processes. Some living things consist of only a single cell. For example, the amoeba and paramecium are composed of one cell. These organisms are called unicellular organisms. On the other hand, some organisms are made up of millions of cells and are referred to as multicellular organisms. For example, fungi, with an example being mushroom, plants, and animals generally. Now let's turn our attention to types of cells. There are 3 types of cells according to their structure, and they are, the first one being eukaryotic organisms. Eukaryotic organisms have no nucleus, no cytoplasm, an example being the virus that we previously talked about. We also have those referred to as prokaryotic, that is, those having no defined nucleus or cytoplasm, example being bacteria. And finally, we have eukaryotic. Cells that are described as being eukaryotic have well-defined nucleus with cytoplasm and all the other structures there is in there, example being fungi, prototists, plants, and animals. Let's turn our attention to the structure of the cell on your screen. The cell has the following parts, as we can see. There's a plasmalemma, which is also the cell surface membrane. There is the lysosome. We have smooth endoplasmic reticulum, We have free ribosome, mitochondrion, Golgi body, centrioles, nuclear membrane, nucleolus, chromatin in the nucleus. We have rough endoplasmic reticulum. We have chloroplast. We have vacuole or vesicle. These are some of the parts you find on a typical cell. All living cells are made up of cytoplasm together with some genetic materials which are usually contained within a nucleus. The whole cell is surrounded by a cell surface membrane which keeps the cell together. The cytoplasm has within it a number of very small microscopic structures called organelles. The organelle is a minute membrane-bound structure within the cytoplasm that performs specific functions in a eukaryotic cell. The organelles include the following: nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondrion, Golgi apparatus or Golgi bodies, lysosomes, vacuoles, chloroplast, ribosomes, and the cytoplasm as the space. Let's begin now with the cell membrane. The cell membrane is a thin, flexible structure that surrounds the cell. It is made up of proteins and fats and controls the movement of materials in and out of the cells. The membrane is selective in that it only lets certain particles to pass through it. For this reason, it is said to be partially or selectively permeable. A partially permeable membrane is one through which certain substances can pass through and others cannot, depending on the size and nature of the molecules of which the substances are made of. Now let's look at the function of the cell membrane. It serves as the barrier between the cell and its surroundings. It controls the movement of materials in and out of the cells by way of its partially permeable nature. All too soon, we've come to the end of this lesson. This lesson was purely on viruses and cells. We looked at viruses and said they are infectious particles that are minute, having either DNA or RNA. We said they are enclosed in a shell called capsid, which is a protein structure. We identified some diseases caused by viruses in animals and in plants. We then shifted our attention to cells, and we identified the position of cell with reference to living organisms. The types and structures were also looked at. We shall continue with the rest of the structures, that is the organelles, in the cell in our next meeting. I believe you've understood today's lesson, and I believe you will continue to study, you will continue to solve the questions, and you will make reference to the notes. Let me know if you have any challenges.